My name is Herminia. I'm 21, and I never thought my own parents would steal from me, but that's exactly what they did. They took the $85,000 I'd saved since childhood for my medical school dreams and handed it to my younger sister Zoe for her latest business scheme. Now they're begging me to come home for Christmas like nothing happened. If you're watching this, I'd love to know where you're viewing from. Please hit like and subscribe before I tell you how I handled the ultimate family betrayal. I grew up in a modest three-bedroom house in Grand Rapids, Michigan, with my parents, Thomas and Diana Patterson. My father worked as an accountant at a local firm, and my mother taught fourth grade at the elementary school down the street. We never had extravagant things, but we always had enough. At least that's what I thought, until I learned the truth about family loyalty. From as early as I can remember, I was always the responsible one. My report cards came home with straight A's and glowing comments about my work ethic. By third grade, I knew I wanted to be a doctor. There was something about the human body that fascinated me, how everything worked together in such perfect harmony when things went right, and how somebody with the right knowledge could fix things when they went wrong. Herminia has such a bright future ahead of her. My teachers would tell my parents at conferences. She's incredibly self-motivated. My parents would nod and smile, but the praise never seemed to excite them the way Zoe's finger paintings did. My little sister, just 2 years younger than me, was always the creative one. Where I would spend hours reading science books, Zoe would create elaborate fantasy worlds with her dolls. Where I would study diligently for tests, Zoe would produce stunning artwork that my parents proudly displayed throughout our home. Your sister just sees the world differently, my mother would explain whenever I quietly questioned why my academic achievements seemed to pale in comparison to Zoe's creativity in my parents' eyes. You have your gifts, and she has hers. By 15, I had started working part-time jobs after school and on weekends. My first job was at the local library shelving books and helping patrons find research materials. Later, I worked at a pharmacy fascinated by the medications and eager to learn anything I could about healthcare. Every dollar I earned went straight into my college fund. My grandparents, especially my mother's parents, recognized my determination. For my 16th birthday, my grandfather William, a retired surgeon himself, helped me set up a special savings account. "This is for medical school, Herminia," he told me, his eyes twinkling with pride as he deposited the first $1,000. "Your grandmother and I believe in you." That day meant everything to me. Someone was finally acknowledging my dream and actively helping me pursue it. Every birthday and Christmas after that, my grandparents would contribute to that account. Sometimes $50, sometimes $500, depending on what they could afford from their retirement income. My parents knew about this account. In fact, they were listed as joint account holders since I was a minor when it was established. They always assured me that the money was secure for my education. "This is your future, Herminia," my father would say whenever we discussed college finances. "We're just holding it until you're ready." By contrast, Zoe never worked a steady job through high school. She was too busy with her art classes, photography club, and social media presence, where she posted her various creative projects. My parents never pushed her to contribute to her own college fund, insisting that her artistic development was more important than working retail jobs. When college application time came, I had secured a substantial partial scholarship to Stanford University's pre-medical program. It covered about 60% of my tuition, but the remaining costs and living expenses were significant. My parents contributed what they could, which wasn't much after they had already started financing Zoe's gap year, to find her artistic voice in Europe. I worked through college too, serving as a research assistant in the biology department and tutoring underclassmen in chemistry and organic chemistry. Every spare penny went into that medical school fund, which had grown to $85,000 by the start of my final undergraduate semester. It represented countless hours of labor, sacrificed social events, and delayed gratification. Medical school applications alone would cost over $10,000 when factoring in application fees, interview travel expenses, and deposits once accepted. Then there would be the actual tuition and living expenses. My savings wouldn't cover everything, but it would make a significant dent and reduce the loans I would need. Throughout my college years, our family dynamic remained largely unchanged. When I would call home to share news about academic achievements or research opportunities, my parents would listen politely before eagerly changing the subject to Zoe's latest creative endeavor. She had returned from Europe and cycled through several potential career paths: a photography studio that closed after 6 months, a handmade jewelry business that never quite took off, and most recently, an attempt at becoming a fashion influencer on social media. Despite her ventures never quite succeeding, my parents remained endlessly optimistic about Zoe's prospects. "She just hasn't found her perfect medium yet," they would say. "But when she does, she'll take the world by storm." I never resented my sister. Zoe was kind-hearted and genuinely creative, if somewhat flighty and impulsive. What bothered me was the disparity in how our parents treated our respective pursuits and the expectations they placed on each of us. As my final semester approached, I began noticing subtle changes in my parents' behavior during our weekly phone calls. They seemed evasive when I mentioned my savings account or my plans for medical school applications. My father, usually direct and practical about financial matters, would quickly change the subject or make vague comments about family priorities and supporting each other. At the time, I attributed their behavior to stress about their own finances or concern about Zoe's latest business idea. I never imagined they were planning something that would shatter my trust and change our family forever. Looking back, I should have seen the signs, the hesitations when I mentioned my future plans, the way they suddenly became interested in exactly how much my scholarships covered, the questions about whether I really needed so much money for medical school. But I trusted them implicitly. They were my parents after all, the people who were supposed to protect me and support my dreams, not steal them away. If only I had known what was coming, perhaps I could have protected myself. But some lessons about family can only be learned the hard way through heartbreak and betrayal. The day everything changed started like any other final exam period day. I woke up at 5:30 in my small off-campus apartment, made a strong cup of coffee, and settled at my desk to review biochemistry pathways before my 9 a.m. exam. The winter California morning was cool, but nothing like the freezing temperatures back in Michigan. I remember thinking how I wouldn't miss scraping ice off my windshield when I went home for Christmas in 3 weeks. My phone buzzed with a notification which I initially ignored. Exam preparation came first, but when it buzzed 3 more times in quick succession, I glanced over thinking it might be an emergency. The notifications were from my banking app. Transfer completed, $82,500. My heart started racing. This had to be some kind of mistake or fraud. I immediately logged into my account hoping to see my balance intact, the notification just some technical glitch, but the numbers on the screen confirmed my worst fear. My account balance was now $2, $485.27, more than $82,000 gone. My hand shook as I dialed the bank's customer service number. After what felt like an eternity navigating automated menus and verification questions, I finally spoke with a representative. "Yes, Ms. Patterson, I can confirm that a transfer was authorized yesterday evening from your account," the representative said calmly. "It appears the transfer was authorized by Thomas Patterson, who is listed as a joint account holder." "My father," I whispered, unable to process what I was hearing. "There must be some mistake. That's my medical school money. He wouldn't—" "I'm sorry, Ms. Patterson, but the transaction was properly authorized. Since it's a joint account, any account holder has full withdrawal privileges. Would you like me to provide the transaction details?" I hung up and immediately called my parents, hands trembling so badly I could barely hold the phone. My mother answered on the fourth ring. "Herminia, honey, how are you? Aren't you taking finals this week?" The casual tone in her voice made everything worse, as if nothing had happened, as if they hadn't just destroyed my future. "Mom," I struggled to keep my voice steady. "$82,000 was transferred out of my account yesterday. The bank says Dad authorized it. What's going on?" There was a long pause, then some muffled conversation in the background. I heard my father's voice. Then my mother came back on the line. "Sweetheart, your father and I have been meaning to talk to you about this. Zoe has this amazing opportunity to start her fashion business. She's found the perfect retail space and has connections with local designers. This could really be her big break." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Mom, that was my money for medical school I've been saving since I was 16. "Herminia, you're already so successful." My mother continued, her voice taking on that placating tone she used when explaining why Zoe needed special treatment. You have scholarships. You'll qualify for loans. Zoe needs this chance now, or she'll lose the opportunity. My father got on the phone. We're not taking your money, Herminia, he said firmly, as if I was the unreasonable one. We're investing it in your sister's business. Once she's successful, the money will come back to you with interest. This is about family supporting family. Did you even consider asking me first? I demanded, tears streaming down my face. That money represents years of my life, birthdays, Christmases, thousands of hours working while maintaining a 4-point GPA. Don't be so dramatic, my father replied. We're still supporting your education. We just need to balance the family's needs. Zoe has never had the opportunities you've had. The absurdity of that statement left me speechless. Zoe had been given every opportunity. Her gap year in Europe, the photography studio equipment, the jewelry making supplies, the constant emotional and financial support for each new passion. How much did you leave me? I finally asked. My mother's voice brightened as if the amount would somehow make this violation acceptable. We left you $2,500 for emergencies, and we've already told Zoe that 10% of the business profits will go toward your education fund. I laughed bitterly. Profits from which failed business exactly. The photography studio that closed in 6 months, the jewelry line that never sold anything outside our family, or her influencer career with 500 followers. That's unfair, Herminia. My mother sounded hurt. Your sister is finding her path. Not everyone knows exactly what they want at 5 years old like you did. Put Zoe on the phone, I demanded. She's not here right now, my father replied quickly. She's meeting with suppliers. In the background, I distinctly heard my sister's voice asking who was calling. You're lying to me even now, I said quietly. I can hear her. There was another muffled conversation, and then Zoe came on the line. Mina, what's going on? Why are you upset? The innocent confusion in her voice suggested she might not know the source of her sudden business funding. Zoe, did you know where the money for your fashion business came from? I asked directly. Mom and Dad said they were investing in me. They said they had some savings they wanted to use. Her voice trailed off uncertainly. They took my medical school fund, Zoe, $82,000 that I've been saving since I was 16. There was a long silence on the other end. Oh my God, Mina, I didn't know. I swear. I wanted to believe her, but even as she expressed shock, I could hear excitement bubbling beneath her concern, that familiar self-centered focus taking over. But just think, when the business takes off, I can pay you back even more. This is going to work, I promise. I've really found my passion this time. I hung up the phone mid-sentence. I couldn't bear to hear another word about her passion at the expense of mine. I turned off my phone, put my head down on my desk, and sobbed. My biochemistry exam started in 45 minutes. My medical school fund was gone, and my family had betrayed me in a way I never thought possible. I don't remember walking to my biochemistry exam. I don't remember taking it, though I must have gone through the motions. The next clear memory I have is sitting on the floor of my apartment bathroom, staring at the wall, my phone still turned off beside me. A knock on the bathroom door startled me. Herminia, are you in there? I've been calling you for like 10 minutes. It was my roommate Jasmine, a fellow pre-med student who had become one of my closest friends over the past 3 years. I opened the door, and her concerned expression immediately morphed to alarm. Oh my God, what happened? Are you sick? Did someone die? A bitter laugh escaped me, just my trust in my family. I followed her to our small living room and told her everything. The missing money, my parents' justifications, Zoe's obliviousness to the magnitude of what had happened. Jasmine's outrage on my behalf was exactly what I needed. She didn't try to find excuses for my parents or suggest I might be overreacting. She simply validated that what they had done was inexcusable. This is theft, Herminia, she said firmly. Joint account or not, that was your money saved for a specific purpose they were fully aware of. What am I going to do about medical school? I whispered. Applications alone cost thousands, and deposits once you're accepted are due immediately. First thing tomorrow, we're going to the financial aid office, Jasmine decided. Then maybe student legal services. There has to be something they can do. The next morning, we met with Dr. Laurel Chen, a financial aid advisor, who specialized in medical school applications. Her office was small but warm, with plants lining the windowsill, and framed photos of former students in white coats on the walls. Dr. Chen listened carefully to my situation, her expression growing increasingly troubled. "Unfortunately, this is not the first time I've seen something like this," she said finally. "Family financial complications are more common than you might think, but this is particularly egregious." She explained my options: emergency loans for application fees, possible fee waivers for some schools, and delay of application to the next cycle if necessary. "What about legal options?" Jasmine asked. "Her parents stole her money." Dr. Chen sighed. "That's complicated. Joint accounts legally entitle all parties to access the funds regardless of who contributed. However," she added, seeing my face fall, "there might be recourse through small claims court depending on documented agreements about the purpose of the account." I left her office with a folder of resources and a hollow feeling in my chest. Even if I cobbled together enough for applications, the larger problem of tuition remained, and the deeper wound of betrayal couldn't be addressed by financial aid forms. Over the next week, I ignored multiple calls from my parents and Zoe. I couldn't bear to hear more justifications or empty promises. My phone filled with voicemails and texts that grew increasingly urgent as my silence continued. "Herminia, please call us. We need to discuss this as a family." My mother. "You're being immature about this. Call me back immediately." My father. "Mina, I feel awful. Can we talk? I have some ideas about how the business can help you too." Zoe. I couldn't bring myself to listen to more than a few seconds of each message. Every time I tried, the wound would reopen fresh and painful. Meanwhile, Zoe's social media was a parade of her business investments: new designer clothes for market research, expensive lunches with potential collaborators, and the renovation of her atelier, which looked suspiciously like a glorified studio apartment. My money, my future, was being frittered away on her fantasy with my parents' full blessing. Finals week continued, and I moved through it like a ghost, studying, taking exams, returning to my apartment to stare at the walls. Jasmine tried her best to support me, bringing me food when I forgot to eat, sitting with me in silence when I couldn't talk, giving me space when I needed to cry. As the end of the semester approached, the question of winter break loomed. I had planned to go home to Michigan for Christmas, as I always did. The ticket was already purchased. But the thought of sitting across the dinner table from my parents, pretending everything was normal, made me physically ill. "Stay with me," Jasmine offered when I confided my dilemma. "My parents always make enough food for an army, and they'd love to have you. They already think of you as my sister from another mister." The offer was tempting, but something held me back. Perhaps a childish hope that my parents would realize the magnitude of their betrayal if I didn't come home, that my absence at Christmas might make them understand what they had truly done. "I'll think about it." I promised, though in my heart I had already decided. I would not be going home to the people who had stolen my future. I emailed my professors explaining that a family emergency might affect my performance on final exams. Most were understanding, offering extensions or alternative testing dates. But even with their accommodation, my usual academic perfection faltered. For the first time in my life, I wasn't sure I even cared. What was the point of perfect grades if I couldn't afford to continue my education? What was the point of trusting people if those closest to you could betray you so completely? The one small practical step I took was to open a new bank account, solely in my name, and transfer the remaining $2,500. It wasn't much, but at least it was secure from further family investments. As the semester wound down and students began to leave campus for the holidays, I made my decision official. I would spend Christmas with Jasmine's family in Sacramento. I sent my parents a brief text: "I won't be coming home for Christmas. Please don't contact me for a while. I need space to process what you've done." Then I turned off my phone again, packed a small bag for the holidays, and tried to imagine a Christmas without the people I had trusted all my life. 2 weeks before Christmas, I turned my phone back on. The barrage of notifications was overwhelming: 37 missed calls, 56 text messages, and 23 voicemails, mostly from my parents and Zoe. I almost turned it off again immediately, but Jasmine encouraged me to at least check if there was anything important. "You can always block them if it's too much," she reminded me. I started with the text messages, scanning quickly through the familiar patterns of guilt, justification, and minimization. My mother's messages vacillated between concern for my well-being and subtle implications that I was being selfish. "We're so worried about you, honey. Please just call to let us know you're safe. Family needs to stick together through difficult times. Your sister is really hurt that you're punishing her for our decision." My father's messages were more direct, his authority as family patriarch evident in every word. "This silent treatment is unacceptable, Herminia. Call us immediately. You're acting like a child. We need to discuss this like adults. Your mother is beside herself with worry. Is that what you want?" Zoe's messages were the hardest to read, a mix of genuine remorse and complete failure to understand the magnitude of what had happened. "I'm so sorry, Mina. I had no idea that money was yours. The business is already taking off. I've got meetings with actual designers. I promise you'll get your investment back tenfold. This is going to be huge." The most recent messages took on a new tone as Christmas approached, becoming increasingly desperate. "You have to come home for Christmas. It's our family tradition." My mother: "We've always spent Christmas together. Don't break your mother's heart like this." My father: "Christmas won't be the same without you. I've got you an amazing gift for my first supplier meeting, Zoe." I deleted them all without responding and moved on to the voicemails, playing them on speaker so Jasmine could hear as moral support. My mother's voice came through first, wavering with emotion that sounded genuine, but also calculated. "Herminia, sweetheart, it's Mom. I know you're upset, but we need to work this out as a family. Christmas is coming, and we've always been together for Christmas. Remember how you and Zoe used to wake up at 5 a.m. to see what Santa brought? We can make new happy memories like that. Please call me back." Delete. My father, next, stern and unyielding: "Herminia, this has gone on long enough. I understand you're disappointed about the money, but family obligations come before individual desires. Your mother is heartbroken that you might not come home for Christmas. Is that the daughter we raise to abandon family when things get tough? Call us back and we'll discuss your return for the holidays." Delete. Several more in the same vein followed. Then, surprisingly, a voice I hadn't expected: my maternal grandmother, Margaret. "Herminia, it's Grandma. I've been trying to reach you for days. Your mother says you two had some kind of disagreement about money. Can you call me back, dear? I'd like to hear your side of things." That was interesting. Clearly, my parents hadn't told my grandmother exactly what had happened. I saved that message and made a note to call her back. As I continued deleting messages, there was a knock at our apartment door. Jasmine answered while I finished sorting through the digital debris of my family's attempts at contact. Herminia, there's someone here to see you." I looked up to see my grandmother standing in our small living room. Her silver hair perfectly styled as always, her travel clothes immaculate, despite what must have been a long journey from Michigan to California. "Grandma." I stood up, shocked. "What are you doing here?" She opened her arms and I fell into them, suddenly sobbing like a child. She smelled like she always had, like cinnamon and clean laundry. And for a moment, I was 10 years old again, safe in her kitchen after falling off my bike. There, she soothed, patting my back. "Let's sit down and you can tell me everything." Jasmine discreetly excused herself to study at the library, leaving us privacy. Over cups of tea, I told my grandmother exactly what had happened. The $82,000, my parents' justification, Zoe's latest business venture. With each detail, my grandmother's expression grew darker. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment, her hands wrapped tightly around her teacup. "Herminia," she finally said, her voice carefully controlled. "I want to be very clear about something. That account was established for your medical education. Your grandfather and I contributed to it with that specific understanding. Your parents knew this. There was never any ambiguity about its purpose." She took a deep breath. "I had no idea they had done this. They told me you were upset about some family disagreement regarding Christmas plans." "They took everything I'd saved," I whispered. "Years of work, birthday money, Christmas gifts from you and Grandpa, all gone." My grandmother reached across the table and took my hand. "Not everything is gone, Herminia. I may be old, but I still have fight in me. And what they've done is wrong no matter how they try to justify it." She promised to help me, though she warned it might cause a rift in the family. Some things are worth fighting for, she said firmly. Your future is one of them. After she left to check into her hotel, promising to return the next day, the calls from my parents intensified. Clearly, they realized my grandmother had found me and learned the truth. My mother's voicemails became increasingly desperate. Herminia, I don't know what your grandmother has told you, but there are two sides to every story. We were only trying to help both our daughters. Please come home for Christmas so we can work this out as a family. My father's messages grew more defensive. Your grandmother doesn't understand the full picture. Zoe needed this chance, and we made a family decision. Coming to Christmas is non-negotiable, Herminia. Some traditions must be respected. Even my extended family began reaching out. My mother's sister, Aunt Patricia, called to see if she could help mediate the situation. My father's brother, Uncle James, texted about healing family wounds before the holidays. The pressure was mounting from all sides, as if my absence at Christmas was the real problem, not the theft of my education fund. Then Zoe sent a text that pushed me over the edge. You're being so dramatic about this, Mina. It's just money. Family is what matters, especially at Christmas. Stop punishing everyone because you're jealous of my business. I blocked her number immediately, rage boiling inside me. Just money. It was my future, my dream, everything I'd worked for since childhood. The final straw came 3 days before Christmas when a certified letter arrived at my apartment. Inside was a check for $2,000 and a Christmas card signed by my parents. The card read, "Consider this the first repayment toward your education fund. We hope it shows our good faith and commitment to making things right. All we ask in return is that you come home for Christmas as you always have. Family should be together during the holidays." $2,000 out of $82,000, less than 3%. And they expected gratitude. I tore the check and card into tiny pieces and flushed them down the toilet. That night, my grandmother called with a proposal. "I think you should come home for Christmas," she said to my surprise. "Grandma, I can't sit across the table from them and pretend everything's okay." "I'm not suggesting you pretend anything," she replied, her voice steel beneath the grandmotherly warmth. "I'm suggesting you confront this directly with me beside you. Sometimes healing can only begin after the wound is fully exposed." I wasn't sure if I was ready for that confrontation. But as my grandmother pointed out, avoiding them wouldn't get my money back. And I needed that money if I was going to have any chance at medical school. "Think about it," she said before hanging up. "You're stronger than you know, Herminia, and sometimes the strongest thing you can do is show up." My grandmother's words stayed with me throughout that night. By morning, I had made my decision. I would go home for Christmas not to please my parents or maintain family traditions, but to confront the betrayal head-on. I changed my flight from January back to December 23rd and texted my parents only the bare details. Arriving 5:15 p.m. on the 23rd. "Don't meet me at the airport. I'll get a ride." Their response was immediate and effusive, completely ignoring the coldness of my message. "Wonderful news. We're so happy you've decided to come home. Your room is all ready, and Zoe is excited to tell you about the business progress." Their eagerness to pretend everything was normal only strengthened my resolve. This wasn't going to be the Christmas they were expecting. My grandmother picked me up from the Grand Rapids airport, her normally warm smile replaced with grim determination. "I've spoken with your grandfather," she told me as we drove through the snowy Michigan landscape. "He's furious about what they've done. He wanted to come today, but his health wouldn't permit it." She glanced at me. "Are you ready for this, Herminia?" No, I wasn't ready. How could anyone be ready to confront the people who were supposed to love and protect you about such a fundamental betrayal? But I nodded anyway. As ready as I'll ever be. The house looked exactly as it always had at Christmas. Multicolored lights lining the roof and windows. The artificial wreath on the front door. The illuminated reindeer on the lawn, one with a broken antenna that had never been fixed. It was surreal how normal everything appeared when nothing was normal at all. My mother opened the door before we could knock her face a mask of forced cheerfulness. "Herminia, you're home." She moved to hug me, but I stepped back. Her smile faltered, but she quickly recovered. Come in, it's freezing out there." My father appeared behind her, his expression more guarded, but still attempting warmth. Good to have you home, kiddo, he said, as if the last few weeks had never happened, as if he hadn't stolen my future. Zoe bounded down the stairs, her face lit with genuine excitement that made my stomach turn. Was she really this oblivious? Mina, finally, I have so much to show you about the business. The boutique space is amazing, and I've already got 3 local designers ready to feature their collections. I walked past all of them into the living room, my grandmother following close behind her hand, a reassuring pressure on my back. The house smelled like cinnamon and pine, the familiar sense of childhood Christmases. The tree stood in its usual corner, decorated with the mismatched ornaments collected over decades of family holidays. Everything designed to evoke nostalgia and family connection. I remained standing, unwilling to settle in as if this were a normal family gathering. So, my father broke the uncomfortable silence. Who's hungry? Your mother made your favorite lasagna. I'm not here for lasagna, I said quietly. I'm here to discuss what you did. My father's expression hardened. If you're referring to the financial situation, we've already started making repayments. You got our check, right? I tore it up, I replied flatly. $2,000 out of $82,000 is insulting. My mother stepped forward, her hands clasped pleadingly. Herminia, we're trying our best. We're your parents. We love you. We just needed to balance both our daughter's needs. My needs, I laughed bitterly. Was medical school a want, not a need? Was my future some optional luxury? You've always been so capable, my mother insisted. We knew you'd find a way. And Zoe isn't capable, I challenged. She needs to be bankrolled through failure after failure while I work 3 jobs and maintain a 4-point GPA. Zoe flinched. That's not fair, Mina. I'm trying to find my path. On my dime, I shot back, with money you knew was for my medical school. I didn't know, she protested, but her eyes slid away from mine. Not at first, anyway. My grandmother, who had been silently observing, finally spoke. Thomas, Diana, I've been contributing to Herminia's education fund since she was 16. William and I were very clear about its purpose. How could you do this? My father's jaw tightened. Margaret, with all due respect, we make the financial decisions for our family. We needed to consider both our daughters. By stealing from one to give to the other. My grandmother's voice was ice. My father stood abruptly. I think we all need to calm down and enjoy Christmas Eve dinner. We can discuss financial arrangements tomorrow. No, I said firmly. We discuss this now. I want to know exactly how much of my money is left and when I can expect it back. The doorbell rang, interrupting our confrontation. My mother practically ran to answer it, clearly relieved by the diversion. Voices in the entryway announced the arrival of extended family. Aunt Patricia and Uncle Robert, with their children, Uncle James and his new wife cousins from both sides, the annual Christmas Eve family dinner, which my parents had conveniently failed to mention to me. Suddenly, our private confrontation had an audience as relatives streamed in bearing casseroles and gifts, their holiday cheer faltering as they sensed the tension in the room. What's going on? Aunt Patricia asked, looking between my stony face and my father's clenched jaw. Nothing, my father said quickly. Just a little family discussion. Let's move to the dining room, shall we? I almost let it go. Almost allowed myself to be swept along by the social pressure to maintain the facade of holiday harmony. But then I caught my grandmother's eye, saw her slight nod of encouragement, and found my voice. Actually, there is something going on, I said loud enough for everyone to hear. Mom and Dad took $82,000 from my medical school fund to finance Zoe's latest business scheme, without asking me. The room went silent. Aunt Patricia's mouth fell open. Uncle James looked uncomfortable. Cousins exchanged glances. No one seemed to know what to say. My father recovered first. Herminia, this is hardly the time or place. When is the time, Dad? After you've spent it all. When I've had to drop out of medical school because I can't afford the application fees, let alone tuition. Aunt Patricia set down her casserole dish. Thomas, is this true? My father's face reddened. We made a parental decision to support both our daughters. Herminia is being dramatic about it. $82,000 isn't dramatic, I countered. It's theft. My mother tried to salvage the situation. Everyone, please let's enjoy our Christmas Eve dinner. We can sort out family matters later. I want to know if this is true. Uncle James insisted, looking at my father. Did you take Herminia's education money for Zoe's business? Before my father could answer, Zoe jumped in. It was an investment. Not taking, the business is already showing promise, and Mina will get her money back with interest. Investment implies consent, my grandmother said quietly. Herminia never consented. The facade of family harmony completely collapsed. Relatives began taking sides, voices rising. My mother started crying. My father's face grew increasingly flushed as he attempted to defend their actions. In the midst of the chaos, my cousin Sarah, who had been silently observing, asked the question no one else had thought to ask. Zoe, what exactly did you do with $82,000 in just a few weeks? The room quieted again, all eyes turning to my sister. Zoe shifted uncomfortably. Well, there was the retail space rental deposit and inventory purchases. And I needed appropriate clothing for vendor meetings. She bought a new car, I said flatly. A BMW. I saw it in the driveway when we pulled up. More gasps, more uncomfortable glances. It's a business expense, Zoe insisted. Image is everything in fashion. My father had finally had enough. He slammed his hand down on the coffee table, making everyone jump. That's enough, Herminia, you're being selfish and ungrateful. After everything we've done for you, you come home and air family business in front of everyone. Is that how we raised you? You raised me to work hard and save for my future, I replied, surprisingly calm in the face of his anger. Then you stole that future. So yes, maybe I didn't learn the lessons you thought you were teaching. Get out, my father said, his voice low and dangerous. If you can't respect our home and our decisions as your parents, then get out. My mother gasped. Thomas, no, it's Christmas Eve. But my father was beyond reason. I won't be disrespected in my own home, not on Christmas, not by my own daughter. I looked around at the shocked faces of my extended family, at my sobbing mother, at my defiant father, at Zoe's mixture of guilt and indignation. Fine, I said quietly. I'll go. As I turned to leave, my grandmother stepped forward. If Herminia goes, I go too. Aunt Patricia surprised me by adding, and so do we. Thomas, Diana, what you've done is wrong. You can't possibly expect everyone to pretend otherwise. One by one, various family members set down their casserole dishes and picked up their coats. My father watched in disbelief as his carefully orchestrated family Christmas disintegrated before his eyes. I walked out into the snowy Christmas Eve, my grandmother beside me. And for the first time since discovering the theft, I felt something like vindication. The truth was out, the wound was exposed, and I was not alone in recognizing the injustice. But as we drove away from the only home I'd ever known on Christmas Eve, I still had no idea how I would rebuild my future from the ashes of this betrayal. I woke up on Christmas morning in a budget motel room, the synthetic comforter scratchy against my skin, the sound of a neighboring room's television seeping through the thin walls. This was rock bottom, I thought. Alone on Christmas, exiled from my family, my future in tatters. I hadn't even brought gifts with me, assuming I wouldn't be staying. My suitcase contained little more than a few changes of clothes and my laptop. No festive sweaters, no carefully wrapped packages. Nothing to suggest this was supposed to be a day of joy and family connection. My phone had been buzzing intermittently since last night. Messages from my mother begging me to come back. A surprisingly conciliatory text from my father suggesting we start fresh on Christmas Day. Multiple messages from Zoe alternating between guilt and defensive justification. I ignored them all, staring at the water stain on the motel ceiling and wondering how my life had come to this point. A knock on the door startled me out of my misery. I wasn't expecting anyone, and I hadn't ordered room service. Who is it? I called cautiously. It's Grandma Dear, and I've brought reinforcements. I opened the door to find not only my grandmother, but also Aunt Patricia and Aunt Clara, my father's sister, who I hadn't even seen at the previous night's disaster. They were bundled in winter coats carrying shopping bags and what appeared to be containers of food. "Merry Christmas, sweetheart," my grandmother said, giving me a tight hug. "We thought you might need some company today." Aunt Patricia held up the food containers. "And breakfast. No one should eat motel vending machine food on Christmas morning." They filed into the small room, quickly transforming the depressing space with their presence. Aunt Clara spread a festive tablecloth over the wobbly desk. Aunt Patricia arranged breakfast foods, and my grandmother pulled small wrapped packages from her shopping bag. "We can't replace what was taken from you," my grandmother said gently, "but we wanted you to know you're not alone in this." I felt tears welling up again, but different from the angry, despairing tears of the past weeks. These were tears of gratitude, of surprise at finding support where I least expected it. Over breakfast casserole and coffee in paper cups, my aunts and grandmother revealed something surprising. "We've taken up a collection," Aunt Clara announced. "It's not the full amount, not even close, but it's something to help you move forward." She handed me an envelope. Inside was a cashier's check for $15,000. "What?" I looked up in shock. "I don't understand." "After you left last night, the family had quite a discussion," my grandmother explained. "Many of us agree that what your parents did was wrong regardless of their intentions. This is from those of us who could contribute on short notice." "I can't accept this," I protested weakly. "You can and you will," Aunt Patricia said firmly. "Consider it an investment in Dr. Herminia Patterson's future practice. We expect excellent medical care in our old age." It was nowhere near the full amount that had been taken, but it was enough to cover application fees and maybe some interview travel costs. More importantly, it was validation that I wasn't crazy or selfish for feeling betrayed. After breakfast, my grandmother revealed the second part of their plan. "I've already spoken with a lawyer friend," she said. "He believes you have a strong case for recovery of the funds, even from a joint account, given the documented purpose of the account and the contributions from multiple family members." "You want me to sue my parents?" The thought made my stomach clench despite everything. "I want you to protect your future," my grandmother corrected. "Sometimes that requires difficult actions." We spent the morning discussing options, timelines, and next steps. By noon, I had a clearer picture of the path forward, even if it wasn't the path I would have chosen. The unexpected visit from my grandmother and aunts had lifted my spirits, but there was one conversation I still needed to have. After they left, promising to keep in touch about legal developments, I texted Zoe. "I'm at Grandma's house now. Can you come by, just you?" 2 hours later, we sat across from each other in our grandmother's living room. Zoe looked smaller somehow, less confident than she had the night before. "Is it true you knew the money was mine?" I asked directly. She stared at her hands for a long moment before answering. "Not at first. Dad just said they had money to invest in my business. But then, yes, I overheard them talking about your account." "And you were okay with that?" Zoe's eyes filled with tears. "I told myself you'd be fine, that you always land on your feet, that I needed this chance more than you needed the money right then." "How could you possibly believe that?" I demanded. "You know how hard I've worked, how long I've saved." "Because they always made it seem like you had everything figured out," she burst out. "Like you were perfect Herminia, who never needed help while I was the screw-up who couldn't do anything right without their support." The revelation stopped me cold. Was that how she saw our family dynamic? The exact opposite of how I had experienced it. "Zoe, they've bankrolled every single one of your ventures," I said carefully. "They paid for your gap year in Europe. They bought your photography equipment, your jewelry-making supplies. They've supported every passion you've ever had." "Financially, sure," she admitted, "but they've never believed in me the way they believe in you. It's always try this until you find something real, or have fun with your little projects. They talk about your future like it's guaranteed. Mine like it's a phase I need to outgrow." We sat in silence, two sisters raised by the same parents with completely different experiences of family support. "Show me the business records," I finally said. "Let me see where my money went." Reluctantly, Zoe pulled up financial spreadsheets on her phone. As I suspected, the investments were questionable at best. The BMW, expensive dinners, shopping sprees for business attire, rent for a retail space in the trendiest part of town with no clear business plan for sustainability. "This isn't a business, Zoe," I said gently. "This is a fantasy funded by my future," To my surprise, she didn't argue. "I know," she whispered. "I think I've always known. But I wanted so badly to prove them wrong, to show I could succeed at something real. By taking from me, I'm sorry, Mina, I really am. I got caught up in it all, the excitement of finally having enough money to do things right. But it wasn't right. None of it was right." It wasn't a complete resolution, but it was a start. Before she left, Zoe promised to talk to our parents about returning the money. I didn't hold out much hope for that conversation, but at least she was acknowledging the wrong that had been done. The day after Christmas, I met with my grandmother's lawyer friend, Mr. Daniels. He was a kind but direct man in his 60s who specialized in family financial disputes. "Unfortunately, this is a growth area of my practice," he remarked dryly. "Family financial entanglements gone wrong." He reviewed the documentation my grandmother had gathered, bank statements showing regular deposits over years, emails and cards from my grandparents specifying gifts for medical school fund, and even a handwritten agreement my grandfather had insisted my parents sign when the account was first established. "This is actually quite good," Mr. Daniels said, examining the documents. "The intent of the account is clearly established. The contributions from multiple parties are documented. And the sudden withdrawal for an unrelated purpose after years of dedicated savings supports your claim." "Can I really get the money back?" I asked, hardly daring to hope. "I believe so." He nodded. "Joint account or not, there's a strong case for what's called unjust enrichment here. Your parents knew this money was specifically for your education, with contributions from multiple family members for that express purpose." He drafted a formal demand letter that day, which was delivered to my parents within 48 hours. Their response was swift and panicked. Suddenly, they wanted to negotiate. Suddenly, they recognized the seriousness of what they had done. But I was done with half measures and empty promises. With my grandmother's support and Mr. Daniels' guidance, I held firm. I wanted full repayment with interest on a structured timeline, and I wanted it in writing legally binding. For the first time in my life, I was standing up to my parents not with emotional pleas or attempts to earn their approval, but with the full force of my justified demands. It was terrifying. It was empowering. And it was just the beginning of a long journey toward healing and independence. 6 months later, on a warm June afternoon, I sat in a coffee shop near campus, reviewing the final details of my medical school applications. The journey from Christmas Day to this moment had been difficult but transformative. After receiving the formal demand letter, my parents had initially responded with indignation and threats. They couldn't believe I would take legal action against family. But when Mr. Daniels made it clear we were prepared to proceed to court if necessary, their tone changed dramatically. The settlement we eventually reached required them to repay the full $82,000 plus 5% interest. The payments would be made monthly over 3 years, with the first larger installment due immediately to cover my upcoming application expenses. My relationship with my parents remained strained, but was slowly moving toward a new kind of understanding. They had been forced to recognize the harm they had done not just financially, but to the trust that should exist between parent and child. Our conversations were still awkward, limited mostly to practical matters of the repayment schedule, but at least they were happening. My mother had begun sending cautious texts asking about my classes and application progress. My father remained more distant, but was scrupulously on time with every payment. My relationship with Zoe had taken a surprising turn. After our Christmas Day conversation, she had done something I never expected. She took responsibility. She closed the retail space, sold the BMW, and returned what items she could. The recovered funds, about $20,000, were the first installment in our parents' repayment plan. More significantly, Zoe had started working a regular job at a local clothing boutique, learning the business from the ground up, rather than attempting to launch straight into ownership. She contributed part of each paycheck to the repayment fund, insisting on taking personal responsibility for her role in what had happened. "I want to earn my next business," she told me during one of our now weekly phone calls. "Really earn it the way you earned your education." My extended family had remained supportive throughout the process. My grandmother checked in regularly, making sure the repayment plan stayed on track. Aunts and uncles who had contributed to the emergency fund kept in touch, interested in my progress, and offering connections to medical professionals they knew. On the practical side, I had managed to secure additional scholarships and a promising research assistantship to help cover expenses. The emergency fund from my extended family had covered my application fees, and I was cautiously optimistic about my prospects. I had also created a new savings account with significantly different legal protections. This one was solely in my name with no possibility of joint access, and I had worked with a financial advisor to ensure no one could repeat what my parents had done. The coffee shop door opened, and Jasmine walked in waving excitedly. She slid into the chair across from me, practically bouncing with energy. "Did you check your email in the last hour?" she demanded. "No, I've been finalizing my personal statement." "Why?" "The Bradley Research Fellowship decisions came out. We both got it." I stared at her in disbelief. The Bradley Fellowship was extremely competitive, offering substantial funding and prestigious research opportunities that would strengthen my medical school applications. "Are you serious?" "Both of us. Dead serious." $20,000 each plus mentorship with Dr. Levine's team. Mina, this is huge. For the first time in months, I felt tears of joy rather than stress or grief. This fellowship combined with the repayment plan and my other financial aid meant my medical school dreams were back on track. As we celebrated with overpriced coffee drinks, I reflected on everything that had happened since that devastating December morning when I discovered my account had been drained. The betrayal had been painful beyond words. The confrontation had been terrifying. The legal process had been stressful and uncomfortable. But through it all, I had discovered strength I never knew I had. I had learned that sometimes family is who stands by you when the unthinkable happens, not just who shares your DNA. My grandmother, aunts, and extended family had shown me that blood connections can be meaningful when they're based on respect and genuine support. I had learned that financial independence isn't just about having money, but about protecting it appropriately. No more joint accounts. No more assuming good intentions would prevent bad actions. Most importantly, I had learned that standing up for myself wasn't selfish. Setting boundaries wasn't cruel. Demanding respect wasn't unreasonable. As summer progressed, I submitted my medical school applications with a stronger personal statement than I would have written before all this happened. In it, I discussed not just my passion for medicine, but the lessons in resilience and self-advocacy that would make me a better doctor. When July brought my first interview invitation, I celebrated not just the opportunity, but the journey that had made me ready for it. By August, I had scheduled 5 promising interviews and was cautiously optimistic about my prospects. The repayment plan was proceeding on schedule with my parents meeting every deadline so far. As September approached, bringing another academic year and the continued interview season, I received an unexpected call from my father. "We've been thinking," he said, his voice uncharacteristically tentative, "about Christmas this year." I tensed immediately. The memory of last Christmas still stung. "We understand if you don't want to come home," he continued when I didn't respond. "But your mother and I would like to see you if you're willing. Maybe we could come to you instead." It wasn't an apology, not explicitly, but it was an acknowledgement that things had changed, that they couldn't expect me to simply return to old patterns as if nothing had happened. "I'll think about it," I replied, neither committing nor refusing. And I would think about it. I had months to decide, to assess how I felt, to determine what boundaries I needed. What I knew for certain was that I would never again allow someone else's priorities to override my future. I would never again mistake financial support for love or control for care. The path forward wasn't perfectly clear yet, but I was walking it with new confidence. Medical school was within reach again. My financial security was rebuilding. And most importantly, I had learned to advocate fiercely for my own dreams. Have you ever had to stand up to family members who violated your boundaries? What advice would you give to someone dealing with financial betrayal from their own parents? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel for more stories about navigating difficult family dynamics. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember, sometimes the strongest thing you can do is simply stand your ground.